Well, hey everybody, and welcome back to Kiki's Kitchen. I am a little distressed because I made a whole video to show you how to reinvent a leftover, and I used the Amish chicken. If you haven't made the Amish chicken, oh my goodness gracious, you need to make it. It's easy and delicious. And then, because we did have it for leftovers one night, and I was going to put it in the freezer, but my husband ended up being homesick today, so I decided to make chicken noodle soup with it. So I took my chicken off the bone and chopped it up, and I added chicken stock to it, and there was still some gravy, so I put all of that into a soup pot and added some grated carrot and some onion, and it was delicious in those big white egg noodles. And then my iPhone said the storage was full, which it wasn't really, but that's what it said. So I just told you how to do it, so reinvent your leftovers. That's the big ticket. So now what we're gonna do is, tonight I'm making shepherd's pie for you and for my husband. And so shepherd's pie is basically a meat pie, and it's a ground beef mixture that has some vegetables in it and cheese and all the good stuff. And then it's topped with mashed potatoes and then put in the oven and browned off and baked until it's nice and bubbly. So the first thing I thought we would do, now you don't have to make homemade mashed potatoes. You can get the little packet of them, you know, where you just add water, add hot water and kind of fluff them, and those will work just perfectly fine. Or even easier, in the meat section, usually it is, they have little prepared mashed potatoes already done. So you can use that too. But for those of you who want to know how to make mashed potatoes, here we go. There's a couple of things I wanted to show you when I make my mashed potatoes. First off, for the sink portion of it. Only because, you see my sink here? This is my garbage disposal side of the sink. But I don't like to put my peelings for my potatoes down here. Only because, you know what? If anything's going to make it go bad, it's going to be potato peelings. So I don't. So what I have is this little handy dandy thing. And it's got holes in it, see? And so I just cover that so that I can still run the water, because, you know, when you're doing potatoes, for some reason you need to have them underwater when you're peeling them. So I'm going to peel up these potatoes. And what these are white russet potatoes. And if I'm making mashed potatoes for a specific reason, and I happen to think about it when I'm in the store, I'll buy yellow Yukons, or Yukon Golds or whatever, because they really do make a great mashed potato. But because it's just my husband and I don't have 16 different kinds of potatoes in here, because, you know, we like, our potato of choice is generally a baked potato, and to me, russet potatoes are the best baking potato, so that's usually what I have on hand. So, let me get these peeled up real quick. If you don't have a potato peeler, you need to, because honestly, doing this with a knife, I end up taking off so much of the skin that my potato gets much smaller. This just makes it easier for me. So for the two of us and the size meat pie I'm going to make, I'm using 3 big, as you can see, these are big potatoes, and slippery little devils. And it will make a ton of mashed potatoes, quite honestly. But that's okay. There's 2, and my last one. Well, it started out being a rainy and sideways day. I mean, we had some weather. And now, and actually they said maybe around 2, they were going to have some more roll in. But at this point, I think the sun is supposed to come out, and it's supposed to be getting nice around here for the next few days. So I'm looking forward to that, sure. Okay, so there are 3 potatoes. Let me just quickly get my little knife with a hole in it. Have you ever seen these kinds of knives that have the holes here? I never really knew what they were for, but I do now. These, you know how if you use this knife to cut your potatoes up, because the way I like to cut my potatoes to put them in the pot to boil is I like to cut them in half this way, lengthwise, and see how that sticks? And then I like to cut them again lengthwise, sticks. So if you have a knife like this with no holes in, with the holes in it, it doesn't stick. Don't ask me why, but I didn't know that was the point of this knife, but it is. And then I just kind of cut them in uniform pieces so that they're all going to cook the same way. And I'm going to just dump them in the pot. So again, I'm going to do it lengthwise. And then in thirds. This way, everything in the pot's going to cook roughly at the same time. And the last one. There we go. And the other thing is, when you go to pick it up and use it like a scoop, things will fall through the hole. Okay, so that's my potato. I never make mashed potatoes, ever, without putting garlic cloves in them. It's just that little thing in the background that makes you go, this is good. So I happen to have some fresh garlic here, as I always do. Fresh garlic's not hard to keep, just like you keep your potatoes and your onions. Just keep them in that same dry place. It doesn't go in the fridge. Just keep them in that same place and with your potatoes and onions, and it's there when you need it. Have a garlic smasher, of course, but the side of a knife will work too. But if you just smash it, we'll take off all of the skin immediately. And I'm sure that all of the chefs that went to school to be a chef will tell you that it's quite all right to use that root end. I don't like it. It's just one of those things, you know, like there's a debate on whether you wash onions or not. I don't wash, or not onions, mushrooms. You know, you just gently touch the dirt and take it off. Nah, I wash my mushrooms. And the professionals will say that, oh, it makes it spongy. Well, I don't hold it down and under there. I rinse it off. I can't have dirt in my food, guys. Okay, so as you can see, I just smashed it with my little smasher, or if you use the side of your knife, it'll work the same way. And this looks like it's a lot of garlic, but really it's not. And I'm putting it in there whole too, because it will boil and soften just like the potatoes will, and it will have a very nice sweet background flavor to it. It will not be predominant, I promise you. So I'm taking my little woody ends off. I think it goes back to the fact that I've had little woody ends in my mouth before, and I don't like that, so it's not a big deal to me to just cut them all off and be done with it. So I'm going to put all of this into my pot. I'm going to cover them with cold water, never hot water. I learned once a long time ago that you should never start your pots with hot water. You know, it's like, well, you know, maybe that's getting that much closer to boiling faster. But what I have heard is that there are more sediments in hot water than there are in cold. So I just start it with cold, and then it all starts at the same place and comes up at the same time. I'm not going to put a cover on this. I'm going to put it on the stove. It'll come to a boil, and it'll take about 20 minutes to boil and get them soft and tender. And I will come back to you when we get to that point. Okay? Bye. Well, I'm back, and I've decided that instead of making 2 videos out of this, because actually the mashed potatoes is a part of my shepherd's pie, and so to kind of get this all done and give you a real-time flavor of what it's going to take to make this dinner, I'm just going to move forward, because as you can see over there, back behind me, I've got a big pot which has my meat in it, and then the little pot that has with the mashed potatoes. And you really do get the mashed potatoes going as you start to brown your meat so that you can make it all at one time. So I just peeled my mashed potatoes with my garlic. It's in the water. Once it comes to a boil, I will put salt in it. You'll see that in here in a minute. But meanwhile, I'm going to get my meat mixture going. So I have, because you know my favorite meat mixture is always ground beef and Italian sausage, hot and sweet. I like that meat combination. You can have all hamburger meat. You can have all ground chicken, all ground turkey. You can mix it up any way you want to. But that's the way I like to do it. For this particular one, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to brown off this meat with a little salt, pepper, and garlic, and and onion. And so here's my onion. I have cut off the top end of it, and then the root end of it. So now I've got the skin on both sides. I'm going to cut it down the middle. You've seen me do this, I'm sure, many times. But, you know, there's always going to be that day where there's that new person watching that hasn't seen me do this. And to me, these are the time-saving things. I've seen people struggle it's just like peeling an onion, and then it's all uneven, and it's harder to cook it when it's all different sizes. So anyway, cut off the root end and the opposite end, cut it in half and peel it. Then, and of course my camera's probably in the wrong position, you're going to want to take your sharp knife. You hear me talk about sharp knives too. Be careful with them, but they're your friends. Dull knives will cut you quicker than a sharp knife. Come on over there. And go about 3/4 of the way down. You see that? I'm not quite through the whole onion. And do a couple of those, just like that. Maybe 2 or 3, depending upon how big your onion is. Then lay it flat on its face and go in this way and do a couple. So now we've gone this way, and now we've gone this way. So then I'm going to go this way, turn it on its side, and actually what I should be doing is I should be keeping the tip of my knife on the board and cutting it. And then I'm going to flip this on its side, and there we go. And we have nice uniform diced onion. This diced onion is going to go in my meat mixture over here. So I'll be right back. Just throwing it in here. And I'm going to do the other side. Again, I'm going to go almost all the way through, not quite to the edge, a couple of times. Lay it on its face. Hit it this way a couple of times. Spin it and go this way. Put this down and catch the end. I would look at you and say hello, except for when you're working with a knife, you really do need to pay attention, especially a sharp knife. I say it all the time. I know you tire of hearing me say it, but a sharp knife will let you go through things quickly and easily. A dull knife will make you put excess pressure on it. So if you do slip, it's still a knife, and it will cut you deep versus at least applying a lighter pressure. I'll throw this in my bag, and then I'm going to move you. Okay, hang on one second. I'm going to move you over to the stove side of the kitchen. Okay, we're on the stove side of the kitchen now. And you know what I forgot to put in here was garlic. And so I wanted to show you this. Do you see how nice and tight that is? Tightly packed that is? That's when you're buying garlic, that's what you want to look for. You don't want to, because it's tightly packed, it means it's fresh. And so you don't want anything that's real loose, because that means it's kind of dry, and you don't want dry. So I've got a big thing of meat here, and you know I always multitask. So chances are I'm going to take not quite use all of this meat, but at the end of the day, whatever it is I do with all of this. And what I have in here is, there's probably a total of about 3.5 pounds of meat in here. I have ground beef, I have sweet Italian sausage, hot Italian sausage, and ground chicken. I have all of my usual suspects are here once again. And the ground chicken, I grind myself, so I know there's nothing but chicken in there. So, and then of course my trusty meat mallet, or I don't know if it's a meat masher actually, I think is what you call it. At any rate, it breaks up the meat really good and works great. So, I'm going to smash my garlic and get the skin off. I'm going to take the little woody piece off because, you know, it's just how I roll. And then I'm going to give it a rough chop. I'm going to mince it up because I don't ever like the thought of having a big old bite of anything. But when garlic cooks, it cooks down sweet, especially when you're putting it in this way. When you put it in just oil in the beginning of a meal, in the beginning of cooking something in a frying pan, you got to watch it because if it burns, it'll go bitter. But in something like this that already has a lot of juice in it, and you're cooking it with the meat, it's just going to mellow and get flavorful and sweet. So there you go. That's about as big as I'm going to make it. Put that in there. Let that cook with the meat a little bit for just a few minutes before I do the rest. Now, there are as many shepherd's pie recipes as there are spaghetti sauce recipes. So it's a method. It's a method that I'm showing you. You want to make a meat mixture of your liking, whether you use peas and carrots only, or whether you use onion, peas, and carrots and celery and tomatoes, whatever combination you like. My husband happens to believe that both celery and peas, green peas, should be outlawed. I love them. So most often when something calls for peas, I use lima beans or baby lima beans because that's just really what I like. And that at least kind of satisfies that texture thing that I'm missing. So I'm going to let this cook for a minute, but I want to show you that now our potatoes, see that? They're coming up to a boil. So now that they're coming up to a boil, see if I can do this without having, just so you can see. Well, if I take it off the thing, you're not going to be able to see. Hang on a second. I'll get you there. In my massively large kitchen. How about now? Yes. Okay, so you can see that they're boiling, hopefully. Now I'm going to add my salt. If I would have added my salt before now, the salt would have all just gone to the bottom of the pan. How many times have you seen, and you may not have known that this is from the salt, but you have a little scoring on the bottom of your pot? Well, it's because you put the salt in the beginning and it just goes right to the bottom and sticks to the bottom of the pan. If you wait till it's boiling and then you add your salt, it will flavor your food better. That's why when you're making pasta, don't wait until your water is coming to a nice boil, rolling boil. Sorry. And then put your salt in because it'll keep moving in the water. So the other thing I want to make sure that you know is that you're going to have a reaction. It's going to fizz up a little bit, or it can certainly. So, and I like a little salt in there to cook it. So now that they're boiling, I'm going to kind of keep them going or keep an eye on them for maybe another 10 minutes or so. They'll be done. So, well, they'll be done with the first leg of the entertainment anyway. Okay, so now I've got my meat over here, and it's still got a little pink to it, so it's still got a ways to go. And I like my meat mashed up pretty well. I don't like big giant chunks of anything. So in it's gonna go. Now you can take shredded carrots and put in here. The reason I say shredded is because they'll cook faster. Or you can take frozen vegetables frozen vegetables that have been, they're already cooked and blanched. So when you add them to this, they're going to be already cooked. So, but I'm cooking for somebody who doesn't appreciate vegetables as much as I do. So, you work with what you have, and you work with what you like. Like I said, there are so many different recipes for shepherd's pie, but this is the common denominator. Ground meat of whatever kind you like, onions, garlic, tomato paste, Worcestershire, flour, and stock, and beef stock, not broth, stock. So let me get a little spoon to get the tomato sauce out. This is a big pot. I would tell you, so I'm going to probably end up using this whole pan. You would probably, for half of this size, use 2 tablespoons of tomato sauce. I'm just going to go ahead and use the whole thing. And smear it around. So that we can kind of get all the meat coated. And the heat will actually kind of make it, ease it up, loosen it up from the can form. So while that kind of cooks off for a second, I'm going to open now this Succotash, I love this stuff. This is great. This is Margaret Holmes, and I get this at Walmart. It's called Triple Succotash. It's got tomatoes, corn, and lima beans in it. And actually, so since it has the corn in it, I'm not going to open that can of corn. And so therefore, I'm not going to drain anything because it comes in a really nice little sauce. So, if I was going to open this can of corn, I would tell you that I would drain it and rinse it because I kind of like to wash the can off of things. But because I'm using this one, which is kind of like when you're using certain kind of baked beans where you don't really want to wash the can off because that's flavor in there. Okay, so get a few more lumps and bumps out. Excuse me one second. I think I'm going to go get another can because I've decided to make something else with this. Okay, what I decided to do was I decided to take about half of my meat out at this point because it was with where I was garlic, onion, and tomato paste with my ground beef. So I took half of that out and I put it in another pot. See back there? And I will come back to that in a second, and I will make that into some spaghetti sauce. For right now, we're working on the shepherd's pie. So I'm going to add to this a couple of tablespoons of flour. See if I can. So here's one. And here's two. And I may actually put a third in there because really a basic recipe is going to call for a pound of meat. What I have in here now is about 1.5 pounds. So I'm going to use a little bit more of that. And what we're doing that for is because we are going to put some beef stock in here. We are going to put some Worcestershire sauce in here to make it kind of a gravy. And by mixing this flour into the meat like this, it's going to help all of this to thicken and come together as like a gravy. So here is my Worcestershire, and I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of that in here. 1, 2. I may come back to that. And then here is my beef stock. Stock, not broth. I'm telling you, you know how I am on broth. Broth, to me, is colored water. Chicken stock has a little bit more flavor to it. And you want to make sure that you're up on a good heat, because when you add this in here, that combination of the heat and the flour is what's going to be making your gravy. So let's bring that up and get that to thicken a little bit. And while that's doing that, I want to show you this, which is our potatoes. And I want you to see, I'm going to stick my fork in there and see, they're done. So I'm going to put you on pause for just a minute, and I'm going to drain these potatoes. I'll be right back. Can I just tell you, it smells really, really good in here, because it really does. Okay, so where we are, I'll back you up a little bit now, is in my pot, I have about 3/4 of a stick of butter. And to that, I'm going to add my drained potatoes, hang on a second, to my hot pot. And there you go, drained potatoes. Let's see if I can back you up even a little bit more so you can kind of get the gist of it. To that, I am going to add my Duke's mayonnaise. Now, I know you got to think this is weird, and I did too. I swear I did, until my husband showed me the error of my ways. This has everything in it that you're looking for. It has the creaminess of sour cream, all of those things that you would put in your mashed potatoes. It's right here. It's just one of those, you gotta trust me. So I'm gonna put a big old glob in there. That is probably a 1/4 cup. And I'm gonna do it again. So that's probably a 1/3 of a cup all up. So now I'm gonna take my trusty old potato masher, which, you know, you can do this with a hand mixer. However,